Welcome back into the show. Showtime College Football. So excited to be back with you guys once again for another episode with my favorite co-host, Chase Ned. And today we have a special guest for you guys. Another celebrity we're calling him, celebrity guest picker on the Showtime CFB podcast. We have Caden from CFBKings.
Appreciate you having me on.
Now, he is one of our favorite accounts, always has been. Be sure to go follow him on Instagram and Twitter at CFBKings. I believe it's the same on both.
It is.
Same username.
CFBKings.
CFBKings, and he's got some of the best graphics on Instagram. Always been one of my favorites. I literally do hold the opinion. Not even obviously you're on the show, so I'm going to talk positively, but I literally do hold this opinion that you have the best college football graphics on Instagram. It's not close. And so, guys, be sure to go follow CFBKings.
I really appreciate that.
I do my best. Man. He's been around for a while too. He's not some new player. He's been around for a while. I've been following him for a long time. He's a good guy, and go follow him. But let's get started with our CFB pick. I can't wait for this week. Another good week. We talked a little bit about it in our reactions. We saw the playoff come out. Before we start, I'm going to quickly read to you guys, our playoff rankings. At the end of the show, me and Sned are going to give our playoff rankings reactions. I was the only one on the live this week, so you only heard my opinions. You guys have not heard much of Sned's opinions yet, so we're going to be going through all of this at the end of the show. But it is very, very interesting to see what changed. We have Oregon number 1, number 2 Ohio State, number 3 Texas, number 4 Penn State, number 5 Indiana. Now, yes, that is 4 Big Ten teams in the top 5. That will for sure be a topic of debate. Number 6 BYU, number 7 Tennessee, number 8 Notre Dame, number 9 Miami, number 10 Alabama, number 11 Ole Miss, and number 12 Georgia, with the first 2 out being technically Georgia and SMU, Boise State being number 13, squeezing in at number 12 with an automatic bid if they win the Mountain West. So that's our playoff rankings. We're setting the stage now for our pick'em this week. We got a whole good slate of games, but let's go to Chase. Let's go to Sned. He's the pick'em guy.
Pick'em guy. That's right. All right. Let's get started. First up for this week's pick'em, we have 25 Tulane finally snuck into the CFP rankings, which I was happy about. Going against what used to be America's team, I feel, Navy. This week at Navy, Tulane opens up as 7-point favorites. Chase, what are your thoughts on this game? Navy's kind of been shut down not last week, but the 2 weeks prior, they got shut down.
Yeah, it's really weird to see what's happened with Navy, and this does happen a lot. Sadly, I hate to say it. I know Navy's kind of different. They don't act the same as every team, but this does happen a lot in college football, where a team will be riding high. This team like Army, BYU, Indiana. Now we're hopefully gonna see if these are different cases, but whenever it's a team that's not supposed to be undefeated late in the season, a lot of times when they lose, they come to a screeching halt, and all of a sudden it kind of all comes crashing down. I mean, I'm thinking about USF in 2007, that famous team that was number 2. They were 6-7-0, and all of a sudden they finished, I think, like 8 more. It just kind of comes down, and I hope this wouldn't happen for Navy, but lost 2 straight after starting off. 7-0? So it's been hard to see. I mean, it's you never want to see that, especially to Navy, especially to our troops out there. And so, but here the Tulane's been kind of a comeback team this year. Is they had a really tough non-conference. We talked a lot about their game, and then earlier on in the season, of course, they're all the last few years has been with the conversation when it comes to 5 teams, and so when they lost to Kansas home season, and game two win. I they which was Louisiana. Uh, hitting right now. Wave, but all back to the true. But yeah,
They dominate 4-3 over. Outside of those K-State, Navy's just kind of shocking.
I wanted to say, kind of just run head them down. Next,
I hate it. So before we move on, 30 seconds of any G5. They're G5 team and be ranked as G early for a team like that to be.
I can Texas A&M there for throw like 500. LSU even put up 34 on them. To where just off the Jackson Dart stat alone, I'm going to take Texas in this one just because I feel like Quinn, after he was kind of injured there for a sec, I feel like he's kind of Texas is starting to kind of pick things back up again to where I just don't see Arkansas being able to hold Texas below a low amount of points. So,
yeah, Caden, you got it.
Yeah, Arkansas, they have kind of two versions of their team. Like you were talking about with they beat Tennessee and nearly beat Texas A&M, and they beat Mississippi State, I want to say, by like 30 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then they also have the version of themselves where they lose to Ole Miss by 31. They struggled with, I want to say like Oklahoma State earlier in the year, who's 3-6, 3-7. They lost to them. So it just kind of depends on the version of the Hogs that show up. And if it's that version that showed up against Tennessee and Texas A&M, I think they have a pretty good shot. But if it's the one that got destroyed at home by Ole Miss, then it might not be close.
Yeah. Well, yeah, even adding to that, they beat Auburn only by 10, and Auburn's not really anything special this year, and also only beat UAB by 10 early in the season to where, yeah, like you said, two versions of this team. It's never really in between to where, yeah, like you said, depends on what we get. Even if they have the better version, I still think Texas pulls this one out.
Yeah, I think CFBKings couldn't have sent it better. I think it's just Arkansas is, and I feel like this is kind of how the program works. I don't know if it's Pittman. I don't know if it's just how Arkansas plays as a team. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's a completely different team every week. And it does happen when you're playing at a conference like this, you'll have games where, because you're playing such high caliber opponents every week, you're going to have some where you just get boat raced. And then all of a sudden you're going to be in one and it's going to be a close fourth quarter game. And so it's almost impossible to pick Arkansas to do anything because there's been some weeks where it's like 2 weeks ago, me and Chase were like, yeah, Arkansas could beat anybody. I don't think they're going to be that great, but they could beat anybody. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, maybe they can't beat very many people. So It's really hard to pick. They play at Texas, 10 a.m. I do think Texas is starting to gain traction. And that Texas defense still looks so good on paper. And they've done very well. And even in the game they've lost against Georgia, we've talked about it. Their defense, if you look through the lines a little bit, read through the lines a little bit, that defense still actually did a decent job in that game. And so I have a lot of faith in Texas's defense. I don't think Texas is going to drop this game. I do think they actually cover this game. I don't think it'll be very close. I think Texas kind of has something to prove because I know they're ranked number 3, and many people think that's kind of high. They do pass the eye test, but their resume has gotten weaker every single week. not their fault, just due to who they've played and how those teams are faring. They really don't have a statement win. Vanderbilt's their best win. And so you're kind of almost, I feel like people are starting to doubt Texas to a degree. And so I think that'll fuel them a little bit. I got Texas. I think that's an easy one for me to pick, but I like the Texas defense a lot. I don't think Arkansas is scoring too many points.
Yeah. Completely agree with both of you. And then next up, kind of an interesting one. We have number 20 Clemson going to play Pitt. Clemson's opening up by 10-point favorites. I don't really know what to think of either of these teams. Clemson finally played good against a semi-decent team last week in Virginia Tech. But then looking at the rest of their schedule, the only ranked teams they've played, well, Louisville isn't ranked anymore. They've lost to where I don't know what to think exactly with Clemson. But then Pitt, on the other hand, just like Navy, started 7-0, and then they've kind of just sucked, honestly, these last couple of weeks. SMU made them look like just like an FCS school with the amount of yards they put up on them. And then Virginia went into Pitt and beat Pitt by 5. And as a top 25 team, you just can't be losing to Virginia. To where I think I'm going to take Clemson in this one just because Klubnik looked a lot more confident last week. He had some good plays. I don't know, maybe Clemson kind of finishes strong this season to where I like Clemson for sure in this one.
Yeah, I think Clemson does finally get a decent win. It's hard to call this a decent win because Pitt, again, they were very inflated by a somewhat easy schedule. I'm not taking anything away from Pitt, but they're a 7-2 Pitt team who really hasn't beaten anybody. I'm pulling out their strength of schedule. Right now, Pitt's strength of schedule is 79 in the country. And so they really haven't played anybody. They're in the back half, and I don't really have anything to go off with Pitt. Like, I don't have any reason to pick Pitt in this game. This is a very hard pick because Clemson has folded when they've played a decent opponent who wasn't Wake Forest. And so, like, it's a hard game to pick, but I do put some trust in Clemson. It is at Pitt. But obviously that home environment doesn't get crazy. And so I think Clemson does bounce back here. They did win it with Virginia Tech last week. And I honestly think Virginia Tech is a better team than Pitt. I hate to say it because I feel like Pitt has earned more than that. But when I've seen Pitt on the field with their losses and their wins, I feel like Clemson going to win at a lot of Virginia Tech is a much easier feat than winning at Pitt this weekend. So we're kind of just – these picks so far, we're kind of just chalking it up, but I think it's going to be Clemson. Nothing interesting for me. I got Clemson.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I got Clemson as well. I haven't really been super impressed, like you said. It's kind of all or nothing with them too. I think all 7 of their wins are by double digits, and then both of their losses are too. So basically, just depends on the version that we get out of Clemson. But yeah, like you were saying, especially with the game being at noon too at Pitt. I don't think the environment or the road factor will be that big of a challenge, especially with how they just went to Virginia Tech in an afternoon game. I think a much more difficult environment and handled that. So yeah, I've got Clemson against the spread.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, you guys pretty much hit everything else I was thinking. This next game I picked before Rose got hurt for Utah, to where this game's probably not going to be as good as I'd hope. We have Utah traveling to now number 17 Colorado, who's looking to sneak into the Big 12 championship, which not many people expected beginning of the season. Colorado opens up as an 11.5-point favorite. For me, I still like Colorado in this one. I think it would be a lot closer game if Utah had Rose, just because that offense in the first half against BYU finally looked like they figured something out. I think Utah will hold them for a little bit of the game, though, just because Utah's defense is still Utah's defense. They're still very good, but I still like Colorado to pull this one out. But in Colorado fashion, I'm sure it'll be a close game for most of it, and then it'll be a crazy finish. So
couldn't agree more. CFBKings, you got this one first.
Yeah, I've been a Colorado doubter for the whole season, and they've proved me wrong week after week. I thought Texas Tech was going to get them last week, and they just keep winning. So 10 points seems like a little bit – it seems kind of questionable, I guess, against Utah's defense. I don't know what kind of scoring we'll have in this game, but I've doubted them every week, and they keep proving me wrong. So I'll go with Colorado -10.
Yeah, and what we saw from Utah last week gave me a lot of confidence in their offense. Now, the second half obviously was that we saw two Utah teams, two Utah offenses. I know the quarterback's going to be changed, but that Utah defense was something that I was really impressed in. I mean, I was like, wow, this Utah defense can stop a pretty high powered right now BYU offense that had a lot of momentum coming into this game. BYU, by the way, had scored 30 plus points in like 5 straight games. And against Utah, they had not only a kick return for a touchdown was 7 of those, but BYU only got in the end zone, I believe, once in that whole game. And so got down the field, got down and kicked the field goal a few times. But really, that Utah defense is really stout. And the thing that keeps on, it's hard for me with Colorado because Colorado doesn't run the ball, and I know you can win by passing the ball. Trust me, I love watching a team that passes the ball. It's way more fun to watch. But when you're a fan, when you're someone in the program, and you know that you cannot run the ball, that just leaves you for a big vulnerability if Utah's able to put a stop to Travis Hunter, or at least hinder that passing offense of Colorado. I don't know if Colorado can make up for it with rush defense because Utah's also very stout on the rushing side. I'm actually been picking Utah in this game to upset Colorado and shake things up in the Big 12. I think Utah wins this game. They've lost 5 straight. I think last week was demoralizing for Utah, but at the same time, it gave them their last few games. There hasn't been much hope of winning. It was like so bad, even though it was only the 1 score to TCU, and the Houston game was just bad. This BYU game, we all saw the game. Obviously, they had plenty of chances to win, and they very, very much could have won that game. But I think they saw like, okay, we're capable of playing good football, and that was Utah's best football in several weeks, like a month. That was that was their best game in a while, and so I actually have a lot of hope in Utah. I think they win this game, go 5-5. They're playing for a bowl bid. This game matters a lot to both these teams, and I like Colorado. I think they're fun to watch, but I would talk about it every week. They're an offensive generated team. Now the defense has been okay, but this team relies on offense. And at some point, just like Miami, this happens every year. At some point, the team that relies on offense too much will get burned. And I think this is finally the game they get burned. I don't think they can score very well on Utah's defense. And the question comes up to Utah's offense. Can they score? I'm going to put some trust in Utah's offense. They can score 17 points, 20 points. I think this game is a low-scoring game. And it's kind of a hot take. I know that. I think it's 2017 Utes.
Dang. Coming from the BYU fan, I did not expect that one. I'm not gonna lie.
I got a feeling about this one. I think Utah was poised to get a win last week, and I think it's due time now.
Yeah. All right. Next game is a bit of a big implications kind of for the Big 12. We have Arizona State traveling to number 16 Kansas State. Kansas State is 8.5-point favorites. And I was just looking, it looks like Scatabo is more than likely supposed to play, which is big news for the Sun Devils, as he's kind of been like, honestly, like their rock, like he's the reason they're kind of where they at. To where, Caden, I kind of want to open up with you. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on these two teams in this game.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the Sun Devils last week and how they were able to beat UCF. And I know the Knights don't have the best record and they haven't been the most impressive throughout the season, but to do that without Scatabo, like you said, who has done basically everything for them. He's been the number one all-purpose back in the country for a lot of the season in terms of production, and to win without him, I thought was really impressive. And then to get him back, I think they'll be good. But I was looking earlier today too that they actually have a shot still to get to the Big 12 title. They have a lot to play for in terms of Big 12 and potentially college football playoffs. So I think they can definitely cover. I don't know if they'll win, but I'll go with Arizona State +9.
Yeah, this is a good game. This is a fantastic game. People don't realize how big this game is because Kansas State has been slowing down a little bit. No offense to K-State, but it's the last few games haven't been the greatest. You had a kind of a sleepy win against Kansas, barely got out of that one, and then lost to Houston. And it's kind of been like it's been a while since you got a good win at West Virginia was the last time, and that was almost, it feels like a month ago. That was a while ago. That was October 19th, so that was pretty much a month ago. last time they had a solid win, because that Kansas win was very, very close against the Kansas team that was not playing well at the time. And so Arizona State, on the other hand, is riding fairly hot. Arizona State has won 2 straight, Oklahoma State and versus UCF, and did it without Scatabo, obviously. So that was very impressive. But this Arizona State team hasn't really had a huge breakout win. The Utah game, of course, at the time was their breakout win, but we've since seen like, okay, that wasn't quite as good as we thought it was. They lost at Cincinnati, who isn't a bad team. They got something going for them a little bit, but still, they haven't seemed to beat somebody better than them quite yet. Now, from the start of the season, we did think, but how we've seen them right now, 6th or 7th in the Big 12, maybe 5th, maybe 4th, wherever you want to think. It doesn't seem like they've been able to beat the bigger teams. This is their chance. It's at Kansas State. It's a 6 o'clock local time kickoff. This is a tough one. Arizona State plays Kansas State, then BYU the next week. So they could easily position themselves to be in the Big 12 championship. And if they beat Kansas State here, they only have 2 losses at conference along with K-State. And they're just as much of the running as K-State is, or Iowa State. And if they beat Kansas State and Kansas State beats Iowa State, Arizona State's in. This is if Colorado loses a game. So this is a interesting game. I am having trouble who to pick in this one. I kind of want to pick Arizona State to win this game. But at the same time, I understand that Kansas State is the better team. I think for right now, I'm going to be picking Kansas State. But I'm struggling to pick that game because I kind of want ASU to break out and prove everyone wrong. So with Scatabo back, it is anyone's game.
Yeah.
But I got K-State right now by a hair.
I'm with CFBKings on this one. I like Arizona State. Like both of you said, they kind of have everything to play for right now. And if they win this, they're pretty much just right there for the conference championship, hoping Colorado loses to where, and especially with Scatabo back, Kenny Dillingham, I hated him when he was at Oregon, but, he's got this offense kind of firing on all cylinders, especially these last 2 weeks without their star running back. And like Caden said, he's pretty much right there next to Genty, but Genty's just going crazy to where no one really notices it because but he's still having an incredible season to where I do like ASU in this one to upset Kansas State. And like Chase said, Kansas State's kind of just had a down last few weeks or month or so to where I just like the momentum the Sun Devils have going into this game. So I'm picking ASU.
Yeah, but if Arizona State wins this game, this would definitely rank Arizona State. I might be heading to Tempe. I'm excited for the Arizona State BYU game, and that game could be a big noon kickoff or a college game day type game. I mean, it'd be pretty big. It'd be Arizona State would probably they'd be sitting 8-2, and I think they'd get a pretty big jump after finally proving themselves. And so I could see Arizona State being 17 if they win this game, jumping pretty high. So exciting for Arizona State.
No, for sure. Proving everyone wrong. Now, the next one before we jump into 2 bigger SEC games is Oregon, Wisconsin. I kind of just put this on there just because it's at Camp Randall. I believe it's a 6:30 local time game to where it'll be loud. It's a night game. Weather's not supposed to be a huge factor in this one, but I'm taking Oregon. Obviously, I am biased, and I'll stick by that, but I think Oregon's kind of proven that they can hang with these powerful defenses or aggressive defensive lines, offensive lines, whatnot in the Big Ten. To where I like Oregon. I think it will be a close game for most of it, but I think Oregon will do what they've done and kind of just pull away in the second half in this one.
Yeah. Wisconsin hasn't really been, I hate to say it, haven't really been too impressive. I'm a Wisconsin guy. I love Wisconsin. And they have not done their fans any favors, really. I mean, they've been okay. They've barely won the games they're supposed to, and they haven't really gone above themselves too much.
Yeah.
With all due respect, I don't see it quite in them. I hate for that to be the reason, but Wisconsin this year, it's not like they've had crazy close games against Bama and Penn State. Now, the Penn State one was a little closer, but I don't think Penn State's very good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like they have that, like, chemistry and collectivity to pull off a huge win like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just looking at looking at their schedule, they let Bama score 42. They let Iowa score 42. Now Iowa actually does have an offense this year to where you can't really like make fun of them for that, but it's nothing crazy, to where yeah, like you said, I just don't think they have it in them to pull off an upset like this.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm gonna be picking Oregon today, but at the start of the season, I remember talking about this with Chase. I talked about this on Ducks Focus podcast. I said, if not Ohio State, I think it could be Wisconsin that pulls off the upset. I did think Wisconsin was going to be a little bit better, and I didn't think Oregon was going to look this good. And I also thought the weather would play a bigger factor. If it does, it would hinder my pick a little bit. I'd probably still go with Oregon. But at the start of the year, I said, okay, this game could be snowy and windy in Camp Randall. And a team like Oregon, who pretty much needs to pass the ball, obviously they're very well balanced, but operating off of passing the ball is going to be tough. But now that's not as much of a factor, I see Oregon kind of rolling in this one. Camp Randall does get loud. They're loyal. They'll be there. The stadium will be full. That's one thing Wisconsin does. No matter how rough it looks for Wisconsin, they'll be there. But yeah, I'm picking all the favorites today, guys. I hate myself for it, but I'm going with Oregon.
Yeah, I was looking at this game last week actually, just to try to find out at all if Oregon wasn't going to go 12-0, basically trying to see if there was anybody that could give them a challenge. And the only reason that I think Wisconsin might have a shot in this game is because this is Oregon's 8th consecutive game. They haven't had a bye week since September 21st, I want to say, and they have one the week after this. But they've played. This will be their 8th consecutive game, and they have to make another cross-country trip out to Wisconsin. It's a night game, Camp Randall, like you said. The fans will be there. It could be an interesting environment. And then one other thing that I noticed is that they've kind of, like week after week for the past month, their games have started to get a little bit closer. They allowed 0 to Purdue, and then 9 to Illinois, 17 to Michigan, 18 to Maryland. So their defenses, and obviously those teams are a little bit better as you go along, with Purdue being the worst and Maryland and Michigan and Illinois being a little bit better. But they've started to get a little bit closer in those margins. And I think Wisconsin might be able to give them a game. I don't think they'll win, but that 14.5 number, I feel like they could stay within 2 touchdowns, if not keep it close at a field goal or maybe 7.
Valid takes.
Yeah,
actually, that is interesting to look at.
I completely agree. That was, as an Oregon fan, that was the other thing I have been looking at is we haven't had a bye week in forever. And every game's getting closer. We're having guys go down a lot more each game. A lot of key players are going down. We don't have Tez Johnson, hoping he comes back, end of the season for Washington. But yeah, I think this will be a lot closer than people will probably think. But yeah, I think it'll definitely be within 2 scores. So, but jumping to, I think a really interesting game is 23 Missouri heading to 21 South Carolina. And South Carolina opens up as 12-point favorites in this one, which I think is kind of crazy to think about. If we were to go back to the beginning of the season, I don't think anyone would have seen that. For me, I have South Carolina in this one. They're playing awesome football. They just have that one Ole Miss loss that looks kind of bad. But other than that, their other losses are great, like right there to beat LSU and Bama. And their defensive line is just so powerful. I don't think Missouri will be able to handle the pressure just based off how the Missouri offense has looked these last month, honestly, the whole season, to where I like South Carolina to roll in this one, especially having it at home.
Yeah. I am so excited for this game because I feel like most how the country feels, as in Mizzou is one of those teams that I hate to say fraudulent, but they just don't belong ranked right now. They have 2 losses, and in those 2 losses, they have gotten whooped. What is it? Looks like 75-10 in those 2 losses by Texas A&M and Alabama. They beat Vanderbilt in a close game. They beat Boston College in a close game. They beat Oklahoma in a close game. They beat Auburn in a close. They are very, very, very lucky to be 7-2. I'm not hating on Missouri. I picked you guys to be top 10 preseason, so don't come at me being like I hate Missouri. But South Carolina is rolling and covering with that spread. I mean, they are rolling them. They're beating them by 21 plus. I do it right here. I have a Mizzou sweater right here. If Mizzou somehow wins this game, I will wear it for the next podcast episode because I would be shocked if Mizzou won this game. This is at South Carolina. They always play well at home. Now, it feels like whenever South Carolina is supposed to do well, they don't. So, I mean, I will say, like, South Carolina fans, you guys know what I'm talking about. A lot of those years that South Carolina was supposed to be kind of up there, they haven't. They kind of thrive being the underdog. They're that team. But I still think I don't think Missouri's very good. I literally do not think Missouri's very good at football right now. And so South Carolina's been battle tested a lot and has done well in a lot of those games. And give me the Gamecocks by a lot in this one. I can't wait to see what they do.
Agreed. Yeah, I've got South Carolina too, and I'm with you on the Missouri thing. Like, I think they're right there in that group with Arizona State and even like Pitt to some extent. Where do they deserve to be 23? Probably not. But like, who else are you really going to put there? I've been pretty outspoken about Missouri and not believing that they should be ranked, especially like a few weeks back when they were 6-2 and stayed ranked after losing 34-0 to Alabama. But yeah, I think South Carolina is going to be too much for them, especially with the defense and all the injuries that Missouri's had. I was trying to see earlier today if Brady Cook was going to be available, but him and the running back, and they've had injuries all over the place. And I think that South Carolina defense is going to be too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Agree. Yeah. That South Carolina defensive line is pretty crazy. The freshman might be one of the best freshmen I've ever seen. So, yeah. But going to game of the week, college game day, really interesting game. Georgia's coming off a pretty big loss to Ole Miss. Anyone who watched that game knows, besides Jackson Dart's interception in the first quarter and setting Georgia up on the 12, they really, or 20, whatever it was, Georgia really couldn't do much that game. And Ole Miss drove down the field multiple times. They could have had way more if they finished drives and just didn't get a field goal. Where I'm interested to see what goes on in this game, because Ole Miss put so much pressure on Carson Beck, and Tennessee also has a great defensive front to where I don't know what to expect in this one. I think I'm going to go with Tennessee just because of the pressure they can put on the quarterback. And Carson Beck these last few weeks, he's averaging like over 2 interceptions a game. So not a lot of confidence for me in the Georgia Bulldogs right now.
Yeah, this is a weird game because a lot of me, Georgia's been the team for the last few years, as we know, and this year it's kind of been, especially after last week, it's been kind of dug up. Like, oh no, Georgia has 2 losses, and they lost to someone who's not Alabama. Like, is this the end? And it's been weird to like reframe, like, all right, Georgia's not top 10. Yeah, Georgia's not top 10 right now. Can you believe Georgia's not top 10? Like, this is crazy to think that Georgia is not a top 10 team right now. And here's my thing with this one. I think Tennessee could beat Georgia. I think they could beat Georgia in a neutral field or at home, even at Georgia in some cases. But Tennessee could lose a game. Georgia cannot. Now, I've heard people talk about how Georgia can make it in 9-3. Yeah, that's if like a bunch of people that's a very, very generous situation. If a 9-3 Georgia makes it in the playoff, that's extremely generous. That's assuming that, SMU and Miami don't win out. They lose some dumb game, which I don't think they will. That's assuming that BYU doesn't win out or Colorado doesn't win out, and there's a couple lost teams in the Big 12 championship. That's assuming that the SEC gets everybody in ahead of Georgia pretty much. Ole Miss, Bama, Tennessee, and are getting in. Or not getting in. Sorry, excuse me. Those are assuming those teams are not getting in. And so when you look at Georgia, they can't lose this game. If you're thinking Georgia can make it in 9-3, probably there's like a 1% chance of that. When you start to look at the top 25, like, all right, remaining schedules, who's going to lose a game? Most of these teams that are sitting in the top 15 have a fairly easy remaining strength of schedule. Now, obviously, there's a lot of anomalies. Texas plays A&M. Tennessee is about to play Georgia. Now, there's anomalies. But, like, really, most people kind of have it cut out. And there's going to be a loss or two. But what I'm saying is that Georgia can't lose this game. This is an elimination game from Georgia. I think they're going to win this game. I don't pick Georgia that often. I haven't been very confident in them. I think Tennessee is playing better football. Georgia's not playing that very good football. But I think Kirby Smart's a great coach, and I think the problems are just glaring them in the face now all of a sudden. It caught up with them. They're not escaping these close games. They lost a game, and they lost pretty bad. They lost by several scores to Ole Miss. They lost bad. They were humiliated. I think Georgia wins this game. I think they rebound and wins this game. Tennessee can still make the playoff. But I think the SEC is going to do its course and produce 8, 10-2 teams, and no less or no more.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, it's just kind of a weird game, and like I don't necessarily have a lot of confidence in Georgia, especially after last week, and even going back to the week before with how they struggled with Florida and Jacksonville. That was not inspiring at all, the way that they played against Florida's like second and third string players. But I also don't really know what to think of Tennessee. They're another team that kind of has two versions: the one that like dominated at the beginning of the year, granted against some easier competition, but also the one that scored 0 in the first half in 3 consecutive games. And I think this comes down to the coaching. Like you said, I think Kirby's going to have them ready to go. And they haven't beaten Georgia in like 7 years, I don't think. And I think Georgia's won all of those games by double digits. I think there's sort of a mental thing there. I think home field advantage for Georgia. And I think the Dogs get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird game. Like you said, it's a very weird game. It's just both teams have reasons to lose. Both teams have reason to win. And I think it comes down to a mental game that Kirby finally gets his chance to basically say, like, to actually say they're doubting us, and people are actually doubting Georgia. And people are actually saying that Georgia can't make the playoff. And now Kirby Smart can truthfully say to his team, we will not make the playoff if we lose this game.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think another thing to consider, I mean, I'm going with Tennessee still. But Nico did get hurt. He's supposed to play, like he'll be fine, but that definitely will probably be a factor, especially with this Tennessee offense that has struggled as of late. But yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, it will come down to coaching and who has their team ready to go this Saturday. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting.
And Tennessee, I mean, Georgia's offense struggling, and Tennessee's defense is kind of the staple of that team. So it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, if it's a neutral field, I think I'm taking Tennessee, but I do think it's just a slight edge to Georgia. So good game, though. Game of the week.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, anyways, thank you, CFBKings, for coming on with us. Mm-hmm. That was fantastic to hear your picks. And we're going to get on with the podcast. But CFBKings, any last words for the fans for this weekend?
Just wanted to say thanks for having me on and really appreciate it. Happy to do it again sometime down the road.
For sure.
Heck yeah. Definitely will happen. Guys, go follow CFBKings. He's the best. And thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
Well, Chase, that was pretty good. Good pick 'em. CFBKings knows his stuff.
Definitely.
Not a surprise.
Not a surprise at all. My favorite account probably on Instagram for college football. So yeah, everyone go follow. But yeah,
definitely
pretty solid week coming in for college football. Not probably as good as late, but definitely still some possibilities for some upsets. Boston College, SMU, another good game to keep your eye on. Trying to think here. See what else there is. San Jose State, Boise State. Pretty good game. Boise State hasn't looked the strongest against some Mountain West teams, and San Jose State's right there towards the top for the Mountain West. And Kansas, BYU. I almost put that one on there. I mean, BYU, it's only 2.5 points now.
Crazy.
Really shocking to me because it's an 8:15 game local time, so 10:15 Eastern in Provo, Utah, LaVelle Edwards Stadium. And I mean,
I want to hear your thoughts on this, Chase, as an unbiased person. To this game.
I am biased. I do not like BYU at all, but Kansas looked how I expected them to look all season this last week against Iowa State. Daniels actually played a really good game. Their offense looked how they should have all season long. And, their defense, they stepped up for most of the game. They did allow Iowa State to kind of score towards the end there, but I actually think this will be an interesting game just because BYU did kind of struggle when Rose or Avery Johnson scrambled out of the pocket in both those games. and that's something Daniels does love to do. He's a very mobile quarterback. So I'm interested to see how BYU adjusts for their offense, because this is kind of an offense that hits BYU's weak points that I've seen this season, which is mainly a mobile quarterback and a very fast running back at Kansas, to where I'm interested to see how it goes. I do think the crowd will be a huge factor. BYU's number 6, highest ranking since I don't know when. Chase probably knows.
2001, probably 2001.
Yeah.
2001. Yeah.
When the Mountain West was low-key stacked, to where, I don't know, I think this would be a close game, actually. I feel like BYU's kind of like Colorado, low-key. They have very exciting games that they somehow pull out in the end. UCF, it was pretty dominant. Same with Arizona. Baylor, BYU was up huge, and then Baylor came back, and BYU kind of had to finish it off. But, SMU was down to the wire. Oklahoma State, we all know how that finished. Same with Utah, to where I don't know if Kansas can learn how to play prevent, unlike Oklahoma State and Utah, they might actually win this one and not let Retzlaff go down the field with 10 seconds left. So, very interesting game. I think it will be close. I'm actually excited for that one late night game, to where, it's
an interesting game.
What'd you have for the rest of the podcast? I kind of did my pick'em part. I'm the pick'em guy. So
pick'em guy. Well, I did want to. I was looking through the stats. Just doing my daily scroll through the stats while I'm in class. Just scrolling through ESPN, looking at different stats, looking at the FPI, looking at resume, and I wanted to go through what teams have the hardest remaining strength of schedule in the country, and relevant teams that have the hardest remaining strength of schedule. Number 1 right now is Kentucky, but we're not really talking about them in the playoff. Let's go through the top 10. There's some notable teams in the top 10 of remaining strength of schedule. Number 4, Oregon Ducks. Number 4 remaining strength of schedule, which I find surprising. It's at Wisconsin and versus Washington. I wonder why they say that. What are they using?
Really shocking.
Are they using just FPI, raw FPI, to calculate that?
I have no idea.
Because Washington's I'm looking at the FPI. Washington's 40, maybe. So there's something they know that we don't, or it's just a computer. Texas A&M, number 5. This one obviously makes sense. As Texas A&M plays number 3 Texas at home, last game of the season. Definitely one to watch. Tennessee, as they play Georgia this week, is a very interesting one. And let's keep going. Indiana playing at Ohio State, going to be super interesting. Now, that is not this week. That is next week, I believe. So that is going to be a hot game. Cannot wait. That's a huge game. That is a massive game. Holy cow.
Yeah.
How hurt is Indiana? Obviously, if it's a close game, I don't think they'll fall very far. I think people kind of know that. They wouldn't fall more than 3 or 4 spots probably if it's a really close game. But what if they get blown out? How far do you think that people would just... This is
a tough one for me, because Indiana, they haven't really played anybody, at home against Michigan, they struggled with. Michigan had every chance to win that game. Towards the end there, they just couldn't get anything going. Just looking at common opponents with Ohio State and Oregon, they killed Nebraska, but struggled a lot with Washington, struggled a lot with Michigan State for the most of the first half. Oregon did too, to where I can't really compare that one. But Maryland scored 28 on them. I don't know what to think. I feel Ohio State, Oregon, and besides Nebraska with Ohio State, but all the common opponents, those 3 have kind of beat pretty equally in terms of dominance and looking at the scores and just when starters are pulled out, whatnot, defensive plays. But I don't know. That'll be a tough one. Obviously, we'll talk about it next week. I don't want to ramble on about this one. So
yeah, but my question: how far do you think they'd fall if they lost?
If how much were you talking about?
Let's say they lose by 30. Let's say they lose by 28 plus. They lose by 4 scores. So it's it's 38 to 10.
38, 14, 17, whatever, something like that. 3 scores.
Yeah, 3 scores. 24, in the 20s.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
It's 38 to 17. So they get dominated. It's a close game for a little bit, and then Ohio State pushes away.
Based off how far Georgia fell, I'd probably say 14 or 15, probably 9 or 10.
But this is Indiana losing to number 2 Ohio State.
That's the thing. You
it's
can't
the opposite.
And looking at the Penn State loss to Ohio State, granted that was only by 7, but I don't know. That's tough.
I don't even know what my opinion is on it. I don't know how far they would fall. It's the playoff committee's real thing.
Yeah.
I think they should fall to probably about 10 or 11 if they were to lose that game by a lot.
Yeah, I'd say 11.
Because it's their only data point of a good team.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, it's true.
Because when you have more data, when you're looking at a team like Oregon or Ole Miss, BYU, who've played a much stronger, or at least harder teams in general, they've played good teams and shown what they can do against good teams, good or bad. There's more data points. When you're looking at Indiana, this is the first data point that we've had of a team that's a currently top 25 team, even close to that. Really.
Yeah.
Even close to that. The best team they've played is Michigan, probably, or Washington, and those teams are 40 to 50-ish, I would say, in the country. They're okay. But it's weird. I don't know how far they drop. But those are some of the teams with the hardest remaining schedules in the country and that matter for the playoffs. So that'll be very interesting to see. But Chase, I want to get you some of your reactions to the playoff poll. Let's go from 25 up really quick. I got some initial thoughts, and we'll kind of just end the show with this one. Obviously, Tulane, I think we're both happy about. They got credit. I do think Arizona State could have been there. Obviously, I think Tulane also deserves it. So I say, obviously, take Missouri out of 23, push them up, and Arizona State should have been 25. But, that's just my opinion. Army, 24. How do you feel about Army being they're 16 in the AP poll? How do you feel them? How do you feel about them being 24 in the playoff poll?
I mean, I don't know. It's tough to say because they are undefeated, but I mean, it's like, look at who they've played. They haven't really played anybody to where.
Right. But
I mean, let's go through the wins. Let's go through the wins.
I know it's still less than Indiana, but what makes them so much different than Indiana?
Yeah. I think the committee's scared to put them up high.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now, I understand they're beating Air Force, who stinks, 20-3. They're beating North Texas 14-3.
Yeah.
I know they're not killing teams.
I mean, I think
if
they
you watch
should
the games, they are killing teams. They
should definitely be in the teens.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, if they win the American, I don't see why they can't be in the playoff. In all honesty,
yeah,
I don't know. No one can figure out their triple option like people figured out Navy's, to where obviously Army's doing something right.
Yeah.
So,
Notre Dame, man, in 2 weeks. I'm going to be cheering for Army so hard, man. I think the entire country is, because a big thing around the country is that Notre Dame is sitting pretty because they don't have a conference championship to worry about. They just got to win their games and they're done. And they're in. They can't lose. And so people aren't very happy about it. Obviously, they can't get a top 4 seed, but they can just sit where they are just fine and get a home playoff game.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of in the I am also kind of in the I'm not very happy that Notre Dame just gets to sit there. I don't think they've played that great as far as the resume goes, but
I mean, yeah, they haven't played best teams, but they've killed everybody.
So I mean, played the best teams. They have played great, but
I mean, they beat Louisville.
They did.
They beat Georgia Tech, something Miami couldn't do.
That's true.
To where I don't know.
That's valid. That's valid. You got me there.
I mean, they beat Texas A&M. I know it was a different Texas A&M team, but I think this is also a different Notre Dame team now, to where still beat Kyle Field beginning of the season. To where for me, I'm okay with Notre Dame right there. I mean, Tennessee lost to 5-4 Arkansas. I mean, I know it's not NIU, but still, you lost to Arkansas.
Yeah, everyone's had a bad loss. You're right. Well, most people have had a bad loss.
Okay, here's something I'll talk about. I don't know if you talked about on the live yesterday. I kind of commented it for anyone who saw. Maybe Chase talked about it. But I don't get why Miami fell only 5 when they lost to an unranked, now 6-4 Georgia Tech team. But then Georgia fell 9 to losing to a ranked Ole Miss team. Granted, it was 18 points versus 5, but it's Georgia Tech. I'm sorry, but I personally think I have
the devil's advocate answer for you. This is not my stance, but I think they're thinking, well, yes, the loss, if you're comparing the losses equivalently, if both these teams 0-0 lost, yes. But remember, this is Miami's first loss.
It's Miami's first loss, so I get it. But
I
I
think
just
that's
don't think they
why.
should be in the top 10. I'm sorry, but I
Yeah.
mean, any Miami fan who listens, you can come at me. You guys have zero defense, and Georgia Tech finally had a defense that somewhat slowed down Cam Ward, and Mario Cristobal's absolute idiotic decision making to go for it so many times on fourth down is the reason y'all lost that game. Hope you guys like him.
Cristobal plays like he's playing a video game.
Yeah, no, I know that.
That's how
as
he
an Oregon
calls
fan, I
plays.
couldn't stand him. I was so happy he left, and everyone he's a meme. Like people make fun of him. I don't know. That's kind of my only problem with it.
Yeah.
I'm happy they put Ole Miss above Georgia. They'll both have 2 losses. They're expected to win over the other. I'm trying to think here.
I did find it very weird. I was looking at the playoff rankings, and I found this extremely weird. Why is South Carolina ahead of LSU? Like they're next to each other.
Yeah,
Why? That's weird.
I was watching at my work when they came out, and last week they respected the head-to-head matchup so much, and then this week they just put South Carolina above LSU.
Yeah, they respect the other ones. I mean, like
I don't know though.
Penn State ahead of Colorado, Louisville ahead of Clemson,
compare,
Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia.
If you compare the Bama games, South Carolina almost beat Bama at Bama, and Bama went into LSU and absolutely curb stomped the Tigers.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily debating like that South Carolina is not as good as LSU because they're both 6-3, and I would argue that South Carolina is better.
I think South Carolina should have won that LSU game. I think the refs kind of did have an impact there, but like we said, if you should have won, you would have. To where, you can't really go back to like week 5 and complain about something.
No, it's true. It's just weird. It's just weird that they decided to put them next to each other. But
yeah,
I find it weird because I know it was a long time ago, but head-to-head should matter more than any other metric, especially when they're within 2 or 3 spots.
I mean, look at Louisville, Clemson. You know, they respected that one to where.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting. But overall, I'm actually pretty happy with the rankings for the playoff. Besides the Miami and I don't know. About everything else I'm okay with, you know.
I haven't said my number one yet. My number one
that's BYU should be ahead of Indiana.
That's not what it is.
Oh wow.
I'm actually honestly okay. I'm pretty okay.
Penn State should not be number 4 as yours. Indiana and BYU should move up.
Yeah, no, not necessarily that. Well, yes, I think everyone should move up. I think everybody should move up. I think Penn State should move down. Oh my gosh. Why on earth is Penn State number 4? Why? I would love for someone to logically explain to me. Please put it into words. Write me a short response. Maybe a paragraph will do on why Penn State rationally compared to other teams should be number 4. Please. I would love to hear any stat that they have better than anyone behind them, other than they have 1 loss rather than 2, or 0.
I have no idea.
I do not understand why they're. It just makes no sense why that they are 8-1 at number 4 with literally a win over nobody. Now Texas at least passes the eye test. At least they have no very good wins, but at least they pass the eye test. Penn State doesn't. Now they beat Washington. That's their first game in a long time that they passed the eye. Like in a long time they passed the eye test since September. For the past 6 games, they have not done well. They have underperformed in every game. It's crazy to me, and they're probably going to win out because they play at Purdue, at Minnesota versus Maryland. They're probably going to go 11-1 and be ranked 3, and everyone's going to be like, "Yeah, all right, go Penn State." And it's like, what are you talking about? Like. They could make the playoff 11-1 and be like number 9 because they've beaten they will go this entire freaking schedule, and the best team they've beaten is like, I don't know, 40th ranked FPI, USC, or Washington. That's like the best team they've beaten. It's crazy to me.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
No, I agree with you on that one. I won't lie.
That's my rant. That's my rant.
Another thing I find interesting. I mean, Chase might get mad at me for this, but I was surprised BYU jumped Tennessee. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of surprised by that because Tennessee had a pretty dominant performance, even without Nico for the second half. And a lot of people watching that BYU game were kind of like, okay, like this BYU team does not look that good in this game. I mean, yeah, it's probably the worst game they've had this season. Don't get me wrong. But I was kind of surprised they jumped BYU over Tennessee this week. But I mean, I'm fine with it. BYU has that 0 and Tennessee has the 1, to where it makes sense to me. But I don't know. I was kind of surprised by that just because Tennessee looked a lot more dominant in their game than BYU did against the third string quarterback at 4-4 Utah. So
yeah, Indiana and BYU jumped Tennessee.
Yeah,
despite both having probably their least least efficient, least I don't know, convincing wins of the season.
Yeah. No.
So no, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. However, I think it's the right ranking from I think it's a correction. Greg McElroy said this on the playoff committee's thing, and other people said, no, I don't think it's a correction. I think they just that's a correction. It's a correction because I think last week Tennessee was one of those teams like I don't think they should be ahead of Indiana or BYU. Like they're close. They're definitely close, but like I don't think they're kind of like Penn State. I think Penn State you could rank behind Indiana, BYU. But like I think it's a correction, and I was very surprised that of all weeks to move them, to jump them ahead, it was this week. I completely agree with you. I found it very weird. And it was kind of like, wait, so, wait. I thought of all weeks for BYU and Indiana to jump, it was this one when they both did not play very well.
Yeah.
Weird. It was very weird to me.
Yeah.
So I think it's properly ranked to a degree. But it was if you're talking about this week, is very weird that it happened this week.
Yeah, no, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. I think that's a super solid take. I kind of wanted to bring that up.
That's kind of why in my personal rankings, I actually dropped BYU a little bit because they just didn't look good to me this last week.
No.
They struggled. Couldn't really get anything going until Utah changed their defense, which I still cannot concept.
Well, it was a rivalry game though. I mean, it was a rivalry game. You gotta give the rivalry game excuse, but yeah.
It was a rivalry game, but I don't know. I could not wrap my head around that game for a while there. I was just like, what on earth? But
that's valid.
Anyways, moving on.
Valid.
But yeah, overall, I
do have one more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Miami, back to Miami. Miami's ranked number 9, SMU's 14. That's kind of another one where it's like, put those two teams together, and that's like where it just shows bias of like, Miami's already up here.
This is my problem with the Miamis because SMU is number 1 in the ACC right now. They've performed better against every common opponent, and SMU's loss is to now number 6, BYU by 3. I just don't get why Miami's ahead of them. I just don't get it. It's because they got the refs to, give them the game against Cal and Virginia Tech. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. The only one, like you can point to pretty much anything and say, all right, who has the worst loss? Miami by a lot. Okay, who has the best win? I would say it's SMU at Louisville and Pitt. Miami just won at Louisville, not Pitt. Not the greatest, but it's enough to. Miami doesn't have very good wins either. And when you start looking at more, it's like, what's the only thing that could give Miami an edge over SMU? It's like, well, Cam Ward's kind of good. Yeah, he is. He is pretty good. But SMU is also scoring 70 on everybody. And then you look at, okay, I guess common opponents. Duke is really the only one you can point to. But then again, Miami was in a one-score game with Duke in the fourth quarter. So, like, it's both those teams struggled against Duke. And when you look at those two teams, what we did in our poll, Chase, and we didn't even talk about this, but we both agreed on it. We had Miami move down to like 12 or 13 and SMU slide right above them. SMU is playing way better than Miami's right now. SMU is a better team than Miami's right now, 100%.
I completely agree.
And so I don't quite understand why. I think Miami should drop below those SEC teams, and I think SMU is the person in number 13, number 12 in the playoff spot, and Miami is sitting dry at 13. Now they can definitely earn their way back in. They probably will, but we'll see. We'll see them play each other. So it's not we don't need to argue for 20 minutes about it because we're going to see them play probably in the ACC championship. So
yeah, exactly.
But that is one of my complaints is it shows like the brand bias / like, well, they've been like when people I saw someone, I'm not going to name the account, but they're a college football account. This happened a couple weeks ago. And this is my last thought. Like I saw someone say this, like legitimately say this as a defense for somebody. And this blew my mind on what a ranking means in a bad way. Like, how on earth would you think this? They said, like, well, I was like, why is X team behind B team? They're exactly the same. This team, I would say, is actually better. Like, well, they were ranked first. what? That shouldn't matter. Miami is ranked higher for longer, so they should be ahead of SMU. No, they shouldn't. That doesn't mean anything. That's not a metric. What are you talking about? That's just a figment of the AP's imagination. Now, I'm not saying the AP poll's bad, but I'm just saying like
okay,
that's
then
just what people
we
thought
should
of
have the same. We should have the same argument with Indiana then.
Yeah.
Like if Tennessee is going to be ahead of going to be ahead of unranked Army, then they should be ahead of unranked Indiana and BYU then. To where I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's not really exactly my argument, but I mean, kind of. But my argument is like when teams are equal, I'm talking about teams that like you can compare them and they're equal. I hate like I don't like when AP voters take the same poll they have and then adjust a poll. You should restart and do a new poll every week. Now it's still going to look almost the same. I'm not saying you have to throw everything out, but like use everything and re-rank the teams every week. Doesn't mean it's a power rating. You're more of a power rating guy. I'm less, but I'm still saying like that's what I do every week. I throw it out and I reconfirm like, all right, does this team still deserve to be this high? And that's why my rankings can change so much because I'm like, you know what? Actually, this team does not deserve this. It's not a matter of Miami moved down 9 spots. That's so bad. It's like, no, I don't think that they deserve to be that high. Now they have a 1. And so I hate that. Someone was using that and I hated that metric. I was like, what are you talking about? Being ranked first doesn't mean anything. And so I feel like some people will just move up. Like, all right, let's take the playoff rankings right now. Committee looks at the playoff rankings. All right, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Miami, up or down? And it's like, no, you shouldn't do it like that. You should rank the teams individually on how they. I know, I'm ranting now, but
you're rambling.
Yeah, you guys know what I mean, though.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah,
bro.
you got me.
We got you.
But with all the antics, college football is still good. I love it.
Still awesome. I'm getting more and more excited for the playoff each week. Yeah, as an Oregon fan, I finally am like, dang, bro, we actually might do it this year, to where it doesn't feel real.
Bro. You gotta chill, bro.
I'm being confident in my team, bro. I don't care.
BYU, we might do it this year, man.
Yeah, no,
we might win the whole thing.
Be so for real. I agree I agree with Pat McAfee, bro. Any SEC team with 2 losses will beat BYU right now.
It wasn't Pat McAfee. It was the JD Pickle or whatever.
Oh, JD Pickle, whoever it is, except Missouri. Yeah. You guys would beat Missouri. But.
Yeah. Well, my one rebuttal for that is that may be true that any team might be favored, but you can't say that because his reasoning was that any player on BYU doesn't even make the 2 deep on Georgia. I'm like, yeah, neither does Minnesota against USC, but you know who won that game? Neither does Vanderbilt on Alabama. I don't think hardly any players on Vanderbilt could make the 3 deep on Alabama.
Yeah.
But they still don't give me that. You can't use talent as a metric that's that heavy. You can use it as some of it, but you can't just say like, well, yeah,
I'm not using talent as a metric.
Well, that's what he used.
Oh, okay. Then that part I don't agree with. That part I don't agree with.
Because that's a flawed metric. College football. That's not what matters. We've seen Texas A&M and Miami for years. Obviously, this year they actually are performing well. We've seen them match up on teams that they are. It's 5 stars versus 1 stars, and the 1-star team can beat them. So clearly, that does not matter when you're talking about neutral field favorability. It's like, yeah, but they still could beat them. I would still give you a decent chance against a lot of those teams. Indiana, your matchup Indiana versus Ohio State. Are you kidding me? Like the talent gap is so wide, but like Indiana has a chance. There's so much mental factors that factor into a game, chemistry, schematic. I mean, it's just like I hate when people say that. It's just like obviously I'm biased because I come from a school that doesn't recruit 5 stars. We don't get them, but like I don't know. I just hate that. I feel like the SEC bias and that's like I don't think so, bro. Like some of these teams that doesn't happen. So that's my take on that. I feel like that is now if he's not using them to rank teams, he's just saying that to say that there could be more gravity to it. But if he's saying that like they should be ranked ahead of BYU, that's ridiculous. Or Indiana, that's ridiculous. Blasphemy. Homie doesn't watch football. All right. Not you, but the guy who said that.
Sick.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, good week of college football talk. We will hear from you guys next Monday. Going to be doing our Week 12 reactions, reacting to this crazy week. So we'll see what happens. in the world of college football. And signing out from show
Time.
college football. See you guys. Woo!